Hi, my name is Maggie Sharp, and I'm going to be presenting my social media analysis of Adidas versus Osaka World. So, to start us off, I wanted to give us a background of Adidas and Osaka. So, Adidas is my large company, and Osaka World's my small company. So, to start with Adidas on the left, it started in Germany by a man named Adi Dassler. So one of the big things that they've highlighted throughout their company is that it's a family company from the beginning. And even though it's not still in the family, there's only been six people that have been a CEO of Adidas. And I think that's really important to highlight. And it's something that they've done a pretty good job of sharing and showcasing throughout their social media. Um, Adi started the company. His son and wife ended up taking it over when he passed away. And the last person before new people came in was his son as the CEO. Something that I've noticed because they had a great display of the history of their company was that they hopped on trends very quickly. Even from the beginning, when they heard from athletes that they wanted a certain thing, they were quick to do it. And I think this is something that allows them to excel in so many areas because they've hopped on these trends. They've always been open to creating new things. And then the last part of this is, and why I wanted to compare the two groups is that they excel at streetwear meeting sportswear. And that's what Osaka World's trying to do. Um, when you think of the Samba shoe, you think of like streetwear tennis shoes, but it started out as a football boot, and now there's one section of the samba that can be used for indoor soccer, and then there's another version that people wear every day. Now onto Soccer World. This is one of the things I'm going to talk about at the end, but it was kind of hard to find the history of them. It was only founded 15 years ago in 2011. It is founded by an entrepreneur named Frank Boschman, and then a international field hockey player, well now ex, he doesn't play anymore, but international field hockey player named Steven Butler. One of the big things that they said all over their website and everywhere was that it's meant to fuse hockey with lifestyle. Um, they think that hockey is kind of like an aesthetic way of sport, and it's why a lot of their designs are very sleek. It's why the name is Osaka after just the cool and like simplistic life of Osaka, Japan. And then one of their big things was that in 2021, they actually became the official sponsor of USA Field Hockey. So all of USA Field Hockey's, like training clothes and a lot of their sticks are Osaka, and you'll see that all across the United States, as Osaka is actually a really big field hockey brand. And then the last thing is that they're very athlete centered. They have a lot of athlete partnerships, a lot of field hockey clubs. Like, not only are they partnered with USA Field Hockey, they're partnered with a lot of youth clubs. And in addition to that, something that's super interesting and I didn't know about is that they partner with like collegiate pickleball clubs. So, pickleball is becoming a huge thing in the United States recently, like back again. And they have partnered with colleges that have clubs to create them like custom gear. It's so cool. Anyways, so now on to what I thought was important, and one of the things we looked at was the mentions. So seeing how many times they are mentioned within the news and articles and whatnot using brand watch. So my brands you can see in the top left corner, Osaka had 264, whereas Adidas had 631,000. Very large difference. I think that this almost shows more about a small versus large enterprise versus their media because you really see the difference here. And then underneath, I have other brands, so I separated them between small and large. Small brands I feel like are hard to find because they are small and they're not getting the media that necessarily the large brands are finding. So some of the examples I have are like Tala. Tala had actually the most, which I thought was very interesting. I had never heard of them, so I went and did some research. They're like more like yoga athleisure than I guess more like equipment type. And then Babolat is definitely equipment. 2XU is kind of more like human performance centered. But then, sorry, don't mind my dog in the background. So then the total versus for small versus large was also insane. 374,000 versus 2 million. 2.5 million is, I mean, crazy. But Osaka only took up 0.071%. And again, I think it shows like that's something I'm gonna talk about in my conclusion. Osaka needs to get into the media. The media, getting that earned media really does help. Now, onto the large side, we have, the ones that you're gonna know about Under Armour, Nike, New Balance, but then there's also like golf ones like TaylorMade. They have golf clubs, but then they also have like your streetwear apparel that you can wear. Um, they had 2.5 million mentions, and Adidas took up a lot of it, which I was not expecting. Um, the other group that took up a lot was obviously Nike, but I feel like Nike and Adidas are very large competitors when it comes to the media, and I think Adidas does a great job of getting themselves earned media. Now onto results from looking at their own social media. So the media that is linked in both of these is media that they have on their website. So when you go to the bottom, like bottom right corner, these are the ones that they have linked. And I know for a fact they have other ones, but I thought it was interesting, what they decided to link and what they didn't. So for Osaka, they had their Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and TikTok linked. I decided just in general for both of them to look at Instagram. I think when you think of a brand or a person, the first thing you're gonna do is go to Instagram to look them up. But one thing I found interesting was that their Spotify, they had a Spotify linked, which is not something that you normally see with, athletic brands. But it was very cool, and when I went in and looked, it's interesting because it really showcases their worldly views. Like they had like house music and they had different playlists, but I think it was a great use. And it gets some more views. So when I looked at Osaka at the bottom from one of their most recent posts I pulled, which is also one of their most liked, it has 8,000 likes. And if you click through it, it actually really dives into it's a field hockey bag. It dives into like the material and what it represents. And I think people like this seeing like the full process because it talked about how, the flower was started on pencil and paper and they showed like an actual image of it. And I think people were not only like intrigued because it's very pretty obviously, but also because they got to see like the process of them making it. Now, their average SSOV is 1.124%, which you think is low, but one thing that we've learned is um when we think of influencers, like theirs is only like 3% on the normal. So I think for a brand that this is great. And then when you compare it to Adidas, they have 1.626%. And that kind of puts it into perspective that like Osaka's catching up. And I think as long as they continue to share more of that background, people are going to be intrigued. Now into Adidas, well, and one thing to mention for both is they both have gained 1,000 followers since the research was done. So I thought that was really cool. Um, but onto Adidas, they had their Facebook, Instagram, X, Pinterest, TikTok, and YouTube. I really liked the fact that they had their Pinterest linked onto their website. I think Pinterest is something that we don't really think about, but I was like, what do they have on here? And I think when you are searching for that outfit on Pinterest and you see like oh, I love these Adidas shoes, you're immediately going to go and look them up. So I like that they had that. And then they had 29.4 million, so they're in the million, whereas Osaka hasn't even reached 100K. So I think again shows that difference between a brand that's been around since I think it was first shown in a 1928 Olympics versus a brand that came about 15 years ago. So I think a lot of that has to go towards how long they've been um, working. And then their average was 1.626. Honestly, I think that it's hard to calculate because every post is different. And the biggest thing with the Adidas was that they had a lot of collaborated posts. Even the post that I put on here is collaboration with their Adidas Terrex, which is like their outdoors winter sports group. So almost all of their posts were collaborated somehow. So they're getting, twice the views from the different groups. Okay, so then onto my limitations and conclusions. I combine them because I feel like your limitations are something that you're going to end up wanting to work on, and conclusions are that recommendation. So the big one was Osaka had very, and I mentioned it before, very limited information on the creation of the company. So like finding out who owned it, what it was and the creation of it was surprisingly low. And I think that that is something that people are always intrigued about. Like I went through, I mean, I couldn't even tell you. I probably spent like almost 20 minutes reading through Adidas's, which I just was like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling because that's something that, if you're in social media, if you're in sports, if you're an athlete wanting to work with them, you want to know all of that information. And I think Osaka needs something like that. Um, the next was that the limitation was that Osaka, the sports that they cater to are really summer sports, like pickleball, paddle, and field hockey are not played in the winter. So I think people aren't necessarily looking at their information right now. And I also will say that Adidas is has like Adidas Terrex and some of the other brands that had a lot of TV time with the Winter Olympics, so a lot of their stuff was bigger. And to go along with that, Adidas is super widespread. So they have like Adidas football, Adidas Terrex, Adidas, like they have so many social medias for each section. I I can't tell if that's good or bad. Um, but I almost want to say that like I want to see it more consolidated and all under the Adidas brand because like my first thought if I'm looking for cleats isn't to go look at Adidas football. It's to look at Adidas. So I don't know if that would help. The other thing is with Adidas having all of these different brands, they a lot of their social media is focused on the equipment and the shoes and some of their other stuff, but they pride themselves on their streetwear, but I didn't see much streetwear on their um, Instagram. And then I think both companies need to be leveraging their athletes. So, with the world of NIL and professional athletes being willing to collaborate, I think that they need to be leveraging this more and not only just like, here's an athlete in our gear, but here's an athlete and their story, but they're also wearing our gear. So, here's something to look at. Um, and then to go along with that, I think Osaka does do a good job of showing their athletes and their like smaller clubs on their website. So when you're looking at their website, it actually has like a club drop down. It has um little mini stories of the athletes that they collaborate with, but I want to see that on their media, on their social media too. And then the last part is something that I've talked about in my other sports classes is community engagement is super big in sports right now. And being able to leverage that on your social media is something that is going to draw in so many new kinds of sponsors and followers, and I think both organizations can benefit from it. And then the last, and honestly, to me, one of the most important things is that Osaka World needs to work on earned media. The fact that they only had 600 or 200 mentions through Brandwatch is crazy. I think that they need to tell more stories and get into the earned media space, which will then increase their followers and increase their social media overall. But anyways, so thank you for listening to my presentation. Here's some sources. A lot of it's just about the history and where I found some of my information about Osaka. So, thank you. Have a good one.